The gray clouds gathered over Windsor Castle like a heavy blanket, promising rain that would soon drench everything below. 8-year-old Princess Charlotte pressed her small nose against the tall window of her family's private quarters, watching the sky grow darker by the minute. She had been looking forward to playing in the castle gardens, but the weather had different plans. Charlotte was known throughout the royal household for her curious nature and kind heart. Unlike many children her age, she paid attention to the people around her, especially those who worked tirelessly to keep her family safe and comfortable. Today, something caught her eye that would stay with her for the rest of the afternoon. Standing perfectly still at his post near the main entrance was Guardsman Thompson, a tall man in his red uniform and black bearskin hat. Charlotte had seen him there many times before, always standing straight and proud, never moving from his position. She knew from her parents that the guards had very important jobs protecting the royal family, and they took their duties very seriously. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Charlotte watched with growing concern. The drops started slowly, pattering against the window like tiny fingers tapping. But within minutes, the gentle shower turned into a steady downpour. The rain came down harder and harder, creating puddles on the stone pathways and soaking everything in sight. Guardsman Thompson remained at his post, completely motionless. Rain streamed down his red jacket and dripped from the brim of his tall black hat. His white gloves grew wet, but his hands stayed perfectly positioned. His polished black boots stood firm in the growing puddle beneath his feet. Not once did he move to seek shelter or adjust his position. Charlotte felt her heart fill with worry as she watched the dedicated guard endure the harsh weather. She had learned from her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, about duty and service, but seeing someone stand so bravely in the pouring rain made those lessons feel very real. The young princess realized that while she was warm and dry inside the castle, this man was getting completely soaked just to keep her family safe. "Mummy," Charlotte called to Catherine, who was reading nearby. "Look at the guard outside. He's getting very wet, but he won't move." Princess Catherine joined her daughter at the window and saw Guardsman Thompson standing steadfast in the rain. She explained to Charlotte how the royal guards had been trained to stay at their posts no matter what the weather brought. It was a tradition that had continued for hundreds of years, showing their complete dedication to protecting the royal family. But Charlotte couldn't stop thinking about how uncomfortable the guard must be feeling. She imagined how the cold rain must be seeping through his uniform, and how heavy his wet hat must feel on his head. The more she watched, the more she wanted to do something to help. As the rain continued to pour down relentlessly, Charlotte made a decision that would surprise everyone around her. She had an idea that came straight from her generous heart, and she was determined to act on it. The young princess had always been taught about kindness and helping others, and now she saw a perfect opportunity to put those lessons into action. Little did anyone know that Charlotte's simple act of compassion would soon create a moment that would be remembered and talked about throughout the royal household for years to come. Charlotte's mind raced as she watched the rain pour down even harder. She could see that Guardsman Thompson had been standing in the same spot for what felt like hours, never once seeking shelter or showing any sign that he was bothered by the weather. But Charlotte could tell that underneath that brave exterior, he must be feeling very cold and uncomfortable. The princess remembered seeing a collection of colorful umbrellas in the entrance hall closet just that morning. Her family kept several umbrellas there for rainy days like this one. Without saying a word to anyone, Charlotte quietly slipped away from the window and made her way toward the entrance hall. Her little feet moved quickly across the polished marble floors of the castle corridors. The halls were lined with portraits of her ancestors, all looking down at her with serious expressions. But Charlotte wasn't thinking about the important people in the paintings. Her mind was focused entirely on the guard who was standing outside getting soaked. When she reached the closet, Charlotte stood on her tiptoes to reach the umbrellas. There were several to choose from: a large black one that belonged to her father, a navy blue one that her mother used, and a smaller red one that was just her size. She carefully selected the large black umbrella, thinking it would provide the best protection from the rain. As Charlotte made her way back through the castle, she passed several staff members who smiled and nodded politely. None of them questioned where the young princess was going or what she planned to do with the umbrella. They were used to Charlotte's independent spirit and kind nature, though they had no idea she was about to do something that would touch everyone's hearts. The princess reached the main door that led outside to where Guardsman Thompson stood. She paused for a moment, suddenly feeling a little nervous about her plan. She had never approached one of the guards while they were on duty before. Her parents had taught her that the guards needed to concentrate on their important work and shouldn't be disturbed. But as Charlotte looked through the glass door at the drenched guard, her determination grew stronger. She could see water dripping steadily from his uniform and forming a large puddle around his feet. His dedication was admirable, but Charlotte felt that even the most dutiful person deserved a little help when nature was being so harsh. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte slowly opened the heavy door. The sound of the rain immediately became much louder, and she could feel the cool, damp air rushing past her. She stepped outside onto the covered area near the entrance, still protected from the rain but now much closer to where the guard stood. Guardsman Thompson remained perfectly still, his eyes focused straight ahead as he had been trained. Even though Charlotte was now just a few feet away from him, he maintained his professional composure. However, from the corner of his eye he could see the small figure of the princess approaching with something in her hands. Charlotte felt her heart beating faster as she got closer to the guard. She had never been this close to one of them while they were working before. Up close she could see how tall and strong Guardsman Thompson was and how seriously he took his job. But she could also see the water streaming down his face and the way his uniform clung to him from being so wet. The brave little princess knew that what she was about to do might seem unusual, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. Sometimes, she thought, being kind was more important than following all the rules perfectly. With the large black umbrella gripped firmly in her small hands, Princess Charlotte took the final steps toward Guardsman Thompson. The rain continued to fall heavily, creating a steady drumming sound on the stone ground around them. Charlotte could feel a few drops splashing onto her dress, but she didn't mind getting a little wet if it meant helping someone else stay dry. "Excuse me," Charlotte said softly, her voice gentle but clear enough to be heard over the sound of the rain. "I noticed you've been standing in the rain for a very long time, and I thought you might like to use this umbrella. For the first time in hours." Guardsman Thompson allowed his eyes to move slightly downward to look at the young princess. What he saw touched his heart deeply. There stood 8-year-old Princess Charlotte, holding an umbrella that was almost as tall as she was, with the most sincere expression of concern on her face. The guard faced a difficult situation. His training told him to remain perfectly still and not break his professional stance under any circumstances. He had been taught that royal guards must never leave their posts or accept anything while on duty. These rules had been followed for generations, and breaking them could result in serious consequences. But here was a member of the royal family herself, offering him kindness and relief from the miserable weather. Guardsman Thompson had been standing in the cold rain for nearly 3 hours, and his uniform was completely soaked through to his skin. His feet were cold and wet inside his boots, and water had been dripping from his hat onto his face for so long that he had stopped noticing it. Charlotte noticed the guard's hesitation and understood that he might be worried about breaking the rules. She had grown up around the castle and knew how seriously everyone took their duties, but she also knew that sometimes rules needed to be bent when kindness was involved. "It's okay," Charlotte said with a warm smile. "I asked my mummy, and she said it would be fine. You've been working so hard to keep us safe, and I don't want you to get sick from being in the rain so long." This wasn't entirely true. Charlotte hadn't actually asked her mother for permission. But in her young mind, she felt certain that her parents would approve of her helping someone who was doing such an important job for their family. Her instincts about kindness told her this was the right thing to do. Slowly, carefully, Charlotte opened the large umbrella above both of them. The immediate relief was obvious as the steady stream of raindrops stopped hitting Guardsman Thompson's hat and shoulders. For the first time in hours, he wasn't being pelted by the cold rain. The guard felt a wave of gratitude wash over him that was almost overwhelming. In all his years of service, no one had ever shown him such thoughtful kindness while he was on duty. The simple gesture from the young princess meant more to him than she could possibly understand. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson said quietly, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "Your kindness is greatly appreciated." Charlotte beamed with happiness, proud that she had been able to help. She adjusted her position slightly to make sure the umbrella was covering the guard as completely as possible. Even though the umbrella was large and a little heavy for her small arms, she was determined to hold it steady for as long as necessary. Standing together under the umbrella, The princess and the guard created an unusual but beautiful scene. The rain continued to pour around them, but they remained dry in their small shelter of kindness and mutual respect. As Charlotte held the umbrella steadily over Guardsman Thompson, something wonderful began to happen. Other staff members inside the castle started to notice the unusual scene unfolding outside. One by one, they gathered near the windows to watch the young princess standing in the rain, selflessly protecting one of their colleagues from the harsh weather. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had worked at the castle for over 20 years, was the first to spot them. She had been walking past a window when she caught sight of the small figure sharing an umbrella with the tall guard. At first, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The scene was so touching that she immediately called over other staff members to witness it. "Come quickly and look at this," Mrs. Henderson whispered to the other housekeepers. "Princess Charlotte is outside with Guardsman Thompson, keeping him dry with an umbrella. Have you ever seen anything so sweet?" Word spread rapidly throughout the castle corridors. Kitchen staff, gardeners, and maintenance workers all found reasons to walk past the windows facing the main entrance. Even the usually serious butler, Mr. Phillips, stopped his important duties to observe the heartwarming scene with a rare smile on his face. Meanwhile, Charlotte was completely focused on her task. Her small arms were beginning to feel tired from holding the large umbrella, but she refused to give up. She noticed that every few minutes she needed to readjust her position to make sure Guardsman Thompson stayed completely covered. The wind occasionally tried to pull the umbrella from her grasp, but she held on tightly with determination. "Are you feeling warmer now?" Charlotte asked the guard, genuinely concerned about his comfort. She had noticed that he had stopped shivering as much since she had arrived with the umbrella. "Much warmer, Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson replied, still maintaining his professional posture but with obvious gratitude in his voice. "You have shown me tremendous kindness today." Charlotte felt proud of her decision to help, but she also began to understand something important about the guard's job. As she stood beside him, she realized how difficult it must be to remain so still and focused for such long periods of time. She had been standing in one place for only about 30 minutes, and her legs were already getting a little tired. "Do you have to stand here for much longer?" Charlotte asked, curious about how the guard's schedule worked. "I have about 2 more hours left in my shift, Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson explained. "Then another guard will come to take my place." Charlotte's eyes widened with surprise. 2 more hours seemed like such a long time, especially in this terrible weather. She looked up at the dark clouds above them and saw no signs that the rain would be stopping anytime soon. In fact, if anything, it seemed to be getting heavier. Without hesitation, Charlotte made another decision that showed just how big her heart was. "Then I'll stay here with you until your shift is over," she announced firmly. Everyone deserves to have someone looking out for them. This declaration worried Guardsman Thompson slightly. He didn't want the young princess to feel obligated to stand outside in the bad weather just for his sake. But he could see the determination in her eyes and knew that trying to convince her to go back inside would be difficult. Inside the castle, Charlotte's parents had finally discovered what their daughter was doing. Princess Catherine and Prince William had been looking for Charlotte when one of the staff members told them about the scene outside. When they looked through the window and saw their daughter standing protectively beside the guard, they felt a mixture of pride and concern. "She has such a good heart," Catherine said softly, watching her daughter's act of kindness. "But she'll catch cold if she stays out there much longer." The royal couple faced their own difficult decision about whether to bring Charlotte inside or allow her to continue her generous gesture. Prince William and Princess Catherine exchanged meaningful glances as they continued watching their daughter through the window. They could see Charlotte's small frame beginning to show signs of fatigue from holding the heavy umbrella, but her determination never wavered. Every few moments she would look up at Guardsman Thompson to make sure he was staying completely dry under their shared shelter. "We should go out there," Prince William said, his voice filled with both pride and parental concern. "She's been standing in that weather for quite a while now, and I can see she's getting tired." Catherine nodded in agreement, but she also felt incredibly moved by what their daughter was doing. "Let's bring another umbrella," she suggested. "That way we can help without interrupting her kind gesture." The royal couple quickly gathered their coats and a second umbrella before heading outside to join Charlotte. As they approached, they could hear their daughter engaged in quiet conversation with the guard, asking him questions about his job and his family. Charlotte had always been curious about the people who worked around the castle. and this was a rare opportunity for her to learn more. "Charlotte, sweetheart," Catherine called gently as she and William approached. "We thought you might like some company out here." Charlotte turned to see her parents approaching with another umbrella, and her face lit up with excitement. "Mummy, Daddy, I'm helping Guardsman Thompson stay dry. He's been standing here for such a long time, and the rain was making him very wet. We can see that, and we're very proud of you for being so thoughtful," Prince William said, opening the second umbrella to cover himself and Catherine. "But perhaps we can help you hold that umbrella. It looks quite heavy for your arms." Charlotte gratefully accepted her father's help, and together they adjusted the positioning so that the umbrella provided even better coverage for the guard. With her parents there to share the load, Charlotte felt much more comfortable and could focus on continuing her conversation with Guardsman Thompson. "Do you have children?" Charlotte asked the guard, her natural curiosity shining through. "I do, Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson replied, a warm smile creeping across his usually serious face. "I have a daughter who is about your age and a son who is a bit younger. Do they know that you protect our family?" Charlotte asked, fascinated by this personal information. "They do, and they're very proud of my job," the guard answered. "When I tell them about today, about how kind you were to me, they'll be amazed. They'll probably ask me to tell the story over and over again." Charlotte beamed with happiness at the thought that her simple act of kindness would be shared with other children. She hadn't realized that her gesture would become a story worth telling, but she was pleased that it might inspire others to be kind too. As they continued to stand together, more members of the royal household began to appear. Princess Catherine's lady-in-waiting brought hot tea in a thermos along with some warm towels. The castle's head of security came to check on the situation, and when he saw what was happening, he quietly arranged for additional guards to be nearby without interfering with the touching scene. Word of Princess Charlotte's kindness began to spread beyond just the castle staff. Some of the other guards who were stationed nearby had heard about what was happening, and were deeply moved by the young princess's gesture. It reminded all of them why they were proud to serve the royal family, not just because it was their duty, but because they were protecting people who truly cared about others. "Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson said quietly to Charlotte, "what you've done today means more to me than you could ever know. You've shown me kindness that I will remember for the rest of my life." Charlotte smiled up at the guard, completely unaware that her simple act of compassion was creating ripples of positive emotion throughout the entire castle community. As the afternoon continued, something magical happened that no one had expected. The story of Princess Charlotte's kindness began to spread far beyond the walls of Windsor Castle. Staff members called their families to share the heartwarming tale, and soon people throughout the local community were hearing about the 8-year-old princess who had stood in the rain to protect a royal guard. When Guardsman Thompson's replacement finally arrived for the next shift, Charlotte insisted on waiting to make sure the new guard also had protection from the rain, which was still falling steadily. Her parents brought out additional umbrellas, and soon there was a small group of people working together to keep everyone dry during the shift change. "Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness," Guardsman Thompson said as he prepared to leave his post. "I will never forget your kindness today. You have reminded me that even in the most difficult circumstances, there are people who care enough to help others." Charlotte gave the guard a warm smile and a small wave as he headed inside to change into dry clothes. She felt happy and satisfied, knowing that she had made someone's difficult day a little bit better. It hadn't occurred to her that what she had done was anything particularly special. In her mind, she had simply seen someone who needed help and had found a way to provide it. The story continued to grow and spread in the days that followed. Guardsman Thompson told his family every detail of what had happened, and his children were so inspired by Charlotte's kindness that they began looking for ways to help others in their own community. His daughter started bringing extra snacks to school to share with classmates who forgot their lunch, and his son began helping elderly neighbors with their shopping. Back at the castle, Princess Charlotte's act of kindness had created a lasting impact on the entire staff. People began paying more attention to ways they could help and support each other, especially during difficult times. The atmosphere throughout the castle became even warmer and more caring than it had been before. Charlotte's parents used the incident as a teaching moment, praising their daughter for her compassion, while also discussing the importance of thinking about others' needs. They were proud that Charlotte had learned the valuable lesson that true kindness sometimes requires personal sacrifice and effort. "You showed real leadership today," Prince William told his daughter that evening as they sat by the fireplace. "The best leaders are those who notice when others need help and take action to provide it." Princess Catherine added, "What you did today showed that you understand one of the most important lessons in life, that we should always try to make things better for the people around us, especially those who are working hard to take care of us." Weeks later, the story was still being talked about throughout the royal household and beyond. Guardsman Thompson received letters from children around the world who had heard the story and wanted to thank him for his service. Many of these letters also included drawings and messages praising Princess Charlotte for her kindness. The umbrella that Charlotte had used became a symbol of compassion within the castle. It was placed in a special location where staff members could see it daily, serving as a reminder that small acts of kindness can have big impacts on people's lives. Princess Charlotte herself remained humble about the attention her actions had received. When asked about it later, she simply said, "I saw that someone needed help, so I helped them. Isn't that what anyone would do?" Her innocent question highlighted the pure heart that had motivated her actions. In Charlotte's mind, helping others wasn't something that deserved special recognition. It was simply the right thing to do. This attitude promised that as she continued to grow up, she would continue to look for ways to make the world a kinder and more caring place for everyone around her. The rainy afternoon, that had started with one person standing alone in harsh weather, had ended with an entire community feeling more connected and inspired to care for one another. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes, and Princess Charlotte's umbrella had proven that kindness, no matter how simple, always makes a difference.